This is Michael Reeder, CPA, and owner of Reeder CPA Group. Welcome to Reeder's Playbook, where I talk with industry experts about practical strategies and insights that help business owners and entrepreneurs level up. Today, I'm talking with David Deshotels, Executive Vice President of Cost Segregation Services, LLC. David is a cost segregation specialist and has traveled the country speaking at CPA Society events. He's an expert in tangible property regulations, or repair regulations. Hello, David Deshotels with Cost Segregation Services, aka CSSI. How you doing, sir?
Michael, that's a mouthful. So you did well with that. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, practice makes perfect, or I guess, semi, kind of, almost perfect. But anyways, so Deshotels. That's it's are you? So you're from Louisiana?
From Louisiana, so that's a Cajun French name. So it's every now and then I might break into my Cajun accent. Yeah, people ask when I travel, they say, "Dave, you don't have much of an accent." I said, "Well, I leave it back home. I don't want to take it out and lose it." No, so
oh, I love that. I love that. What's some good what are some of the classic? When I think of Cajun cuisine, I think of po' boys and there's some other things I can't think of. What are the top 3 or top 5? Crawfish.
The boiled crawfish. Nothing better than a good backyard boiled crawfish dinner where everyone's standing around. Crawfish are the only food good enough to stand up and eat them. So they're too messy to sit down. So usually there's a table with a bunch of newspaper on it, and everybody's pinching the tails and sucking the heads. And so some good boiled crawfish etouffee, some jambalaya, some gumbo. So you need to come on down to Louisiana and experience those good things. I tell people that in Louisiana, we put things in our mouths that other people don't even want to step on. So we eat very, very unusual foods, but it's all good stuff.
That's awesome. Louisiana is definitely on the bucket list for me and my wife. I've never been there, would love to go. Any other places other than New Orleans? I mean, Shreveport. What are the when everyone thinks of New Orleans? I'll speak for myself as a someone from Chicago, and I live in Maine now. There's Mardi Gras, there's New Orleans, there's jazz music. The New Orleans Saints and the New Orleans Pelicans. What other places are some go-to spots in Louisiana?
Yeah, it's I would tell people stick with New Orleans. There's so much to see there. We just had our CSSI national conference. We had 200 people from across the country come in. We were down in the French Quarter at the Montleon Hotel. We even had a traditional jazz parade through the streets of New Orleans. So it's I'll have to send you a picture here. It's of me and a couple other guys with our white suits and our umbrellas dancing in front of the second line is what they call it. So traditionally reserved for jazz funerals and weddings. But we had the band and went through the streets of the French Quarter. So come to New Orleans. It's great. I tell people during Mardi Gras, anywhere else it'd either be illegal or you'd have to pay to see it. But in New Orleans during Mardi Gras, it's all free and open to the public. So it's
awesome.
Come and pass a good time, as they say down here in Louisiana.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. So David, you actually brought up a good thing there. I mean, the national annual CSSI conference was down there. Please, tell the audience more about CSSI. You're obviously the executive vice president, what is CSSI? What is we're going to dive deep into cost segregation, but by all means, please.
Yeah, we're one of the largest cost segregation firms in America. Over 45,000 times over the last 20 years, we were the selected vendor to partner with to get studies done. So we work with tax professionals and their clients all across America. So we've got over 200 reps across the country, inspectors, so we can do projects just about anywhere. But we're one of the leaders and been around for a while, so we think we know what we're doing. But today I look forward to having a conversation and just kind of sharing the opportunity to make people aware of cost segregation and what that is, and if they can take advantage of it, tell them how they can partner with you to get that done. So
absolutely, and I'm glad you said that. So let's start with the basics, right? Can you describe for us what cost segregation is? Because it is a term that's used around a lot in my industry. But perhaps the audience would benefit from a refresher.
Yeah, it's to keep it simple, it's a strategic tax planning tool that accelerates depreciation deductions. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if you can accelerate your depreciation deductions, you get them now versus waiting 40 years for some of those. It's going to reduce your current year taxable income, and that's going to help you retain cash. So cash is king during this economy. It kind of acts as an interest-free loan from the government in that they're giving you your deductions up front so that you can turn that into cash and then reinvest that into your building. But it works as a loan that as long as you own the building, you don't have to pay those back. When you do sell the building, there's recapture there. But it's the cheapest money that anyone will ever buy, especially in these times where it's so hard and so expensive to get a commercial loan. Looking at your strategic tax plan first is probably the best way to do that. So cost segregation. So the process is, a professional like myself partners with Michael's firm, and we identify and reclassify the personal property assets that are in a building. So we shorten the depreciation life of certain assets of the building. Therefore, you can take some of those deductions in the first year under what's called bonus depreciation. So you're getting your deductions now versus 10, 15, 30 years from now. And so, again, interest-free loan from the government, essentially.
Yeah.
So how's that? Pretty. Not.
Yeah.
Try and keep it simple. So Michael, I'm
Try to keep it simple.
Mechanical engineer talking about the tax code. I can put your audience to sleep like that, faster than a Vegas hypnotist. So that's not my purpose. It's to kind of give people an idea. Here's one analogy that I use. So Michael, if you're a little too young for this analogy, but if you were to describe a Big Mac hamburger using straight line depreciation terminology, you would just call that a hamburger, right? But if you were to describe a Big Mac using a cost segregation methodology and terminology, you would call it a 2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. So you're a little bit too young for that. That's probably a 40-year reference.
I'm 30. I'm 37 years old. I definitely know that jingle. And thanks, David. Now I'm hungry for McDonald's, and then I'm going to enjoy it for 10 minutes and then regret it for the next 72 hours. So I appreciate that.
I've been using that in my presentations across the country for 10 years, and I had a slide up and it showed the Big Mac, $3.79. Well, I actually Googled the price of a Big Mac, and they're now $7.35. It's like, oh my gosh, this inflation is incredible. But anyway, I say all that to say, when you're depreciating your building, you have two choices. You can look at the building as a whole, as a hamburger, or you can look at it in its parts and pieces. And a cost segregation specialist's job is to look at all the parts and pieces, identify all the parts and pieces that qualify to be accelerated depreciation, where you can depreciate those over 5 years, 7 years, 15 years versus 39 years. So our job is to look at all those pieces, identify them, value them, and put them in a study to hand off to Michael so that he can get that into your tax return. That's what cost segregation is. Pretty simple.
I mean, to me it is, and you do a great job of simplifying something that can be very complex. I've been a CPA in public practice for about 13 and a half years. We're leaving this recording right now in July of 2024. Somewhere in the early 2010s is when I first stumbled across cost segregation as a CPA.
Wow.
And it's intriguing, right? Because, I am someone who I have to watch myself because I can rabbit hole into all the technical stuff as well. So, commercial property, as you know, David, depreciated normally over 39 years, residential 27 and a half. And when someone, invests in a 500,000 or a million or a, $5 million property or whatever, there are a lot of people that don't know the tax code that think, oh, I just purchased this investment property. Can I write it off? And they don't, like a lot of people, to the layperson out there, that's why they relied on tax professionals like myself and my team. They don't understand that, most of the time, the rental property, the investment property has to get depreciated over a period of time.
Yep.
And also depending on whether how they're classified for tax purposes, real estate professional, active, passive, short-term rental loophole, all those things can play a role in the here and now deductibility of the of the real estate asset. And so cost seg is very intriguing because it can accelerate it, to your point. It can accelerate a big part of it. And so I have a niche in the franchise industry. And so one of the things that I am the bearer of bad news on a lot is talking about the intangible asset of an initial franchise fee. So an
Yep.
initial franchise fee is what's known as a Section 197 intangible asset. And no matter what, that has to get capitalized and amortized over 15 years or 180 months. And so
Wow.
a lot of the times I'm the bearer of bad news. Like, I just paid $50,000 for an initial franchise fee. Can I write that off? No, you can't. You have to write it off over 15 years. So people don't like to hear that. But with fixed assets, right, with real property, fixed assets qualify for cost segregation. And you mentioned bonus depreciation, Section 179 depreciation. I mean, there could be massive tax savings here. And then, so let's talk about timing. Like when is the best time to do a cost segregation study to a building? Or, is the classic answer, it depends.
Yeah, they're great question. And Michael, I'm usually on the other end of the spectrum. I'm the bearer of good news. So they call me to say help, and I'm always the guy that says, here's $100,000 that you didn't realize that was hidden in the walls of your commercial property. So we're on opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm always giving them good news. And a good day for me is ripping back every federal tax dollar that I can and putting it in the hands of responsible people that are going to go and invest it in this economy and make jobs and grow their business, or their business may be on the brink where they need that cash flow, and I give it to them and they're off and running. We save the business and they're off and running because they've invested. But these ideas, as they're not tax loopholes. I have a great slide. I'll send it to you. Maybe Ben will put it up for us. Senator Russell Long says a tax loophole is something that benefits the other guy. If it benefits you, it's tax reform. So we'll be talking about tax reform, right? So these are, and being in the business since 2010, back during those days, my hardest job was convincing the tax professional that this was real. Hey, I've never heard of this. Where's this come from? And now the tax community has totally embraced it. Congress uses accelerated tax deductions to stimulate the economy all the time. So my job is no longer having to educate people like yourself, but there's still a large number of CPAs that haven't heard about it or haven't been utilizing it. So you've been cutting edge.
That's fascinating.
Been doing this since 2010. So my hat's off to you. But it's just knowing the tax code and correctly applying it. So my job is to support Michael. I've never walked in a CPA's office and seen a set of plans of a building on anyone's desk. So it's our job as engineers to get those plans, get that information, look at all that, put together the report, and put a nice bow on it and hand it to Michael so that he can apply that and use it as a strategic tax saving tool. You might want to take all of it or as much as you can in the first year. You might want to, save some for the next couple of years and so forth. But anyway,
you reminded me as you were talking, David, and it's great stuff. You reminded me of this quote that I wanted to share from Judge Learned Hand. Have you heard of Judge Learned Hand?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Have you heard this one? This is a good one.
I have.
And anyone may arrange his affairs so that his taxes shall be as low as possible. He is not bound to choose that pattern which best pays the treasury. There is not, this is the best part, there is not even a patriotic duty to increase one's taxes. The great Judge Learned Hand.
Yeah. It's you have to pay them, but you don't have to leave a tip.
Right.
But
exactly.
But he's absolutely right. So the IRS gives you the choice. You can look at the building as a whole, straight line depreciation over 27 and a half or 39 years, or you can look at it in its parts and pieces, and they recommend to have a cost segregation specialist come in and put that study together, a third party independent, so that they know that, we're not going to fudge the numbers, that it's done right. So if there's ever an audit, they go, oh, you got CSSI to do this. We know this is good. Let's we're not even going to bother with it. A lot of questions. Sometimes, Michael, people ask us questions. What if there is an audit? What happens? It's like, it's our job to defend the study. So we'll be there to explain the study and defend our results. So you don't have to worry about that. And there's no charge for that. So it's covered.
Awesome. So, David, say someone is interested in a cost segregation study. What information is needed to complete one?
Sure. So what we want to do, Michael, for you and your client is we want to run a preliminary analysis to say, okay, let's look and see what the numbers based on our 20-year history. We know pretty close what this might produce for you. So we'll run the numbers. We'll need like 4 pieces of information. We'll need what'd you pay for it, minus the land. So I have a cost basis. That's the term that you're familiar with. How long did you own it? When did you put it in service? What and with that information, we can what type building is it? With that information, we can come up with something that's pretty close, give you a price, and then you and Michael can determine, hey, do we want to get this interest-free loan? We got to pay for the paperwork being done, basically, but here's what that's going to produce. And so once we do that, we send out an inspector, take lots of photos, get the plans, so forth, and then we put that in front of our analyst and do the studies and hand that to you to put into the return. And Michael, you're familiar with a term. So you asked the question, when should you do this? The answer is when you first get your building, you want to do this. It's better to never send money to the government that you don't have to versus trying to get it back after a number of years. If you haven't done this, if you're a new client to Michael and you're coming and your CPA didn't recommend this and it's been a number of years, we can still go back and get you those deductions. So we can still go back. Michael, the form 3115. Basically, it's automatically accepted. The IRS lets you change your method of accounting to say, hey, I did straight line for over the past 5 years, but I should have done a cost segregation study those 5 years. I'm switching. It's a form that's filled out, automatically accepted. We do the study, hand that to Michael, and he gets you the results in the current tax year. So you can go back and take all those deductions that you could have taken, but weren't aware of, and now you can take them in the current tax year.
Absolutely, and it's great stuff, and it helps a lot. I was just talking offline, everyone. I was just talking offline with David before we started, and one of my clients is in the process of getting a cost seg study that's going to save them, $30,000 potentially for their 2023 taxes. They'll have to do a change of accounting method of Form 3115, but it's definitely worth it. It's great stuff, and there's so much here. I mean, we've talked about, and I think, and I'm pretty sure, I'll just reiterate this for everyone, David. We've talked about existing buildings, but what about those that aren't yet constructed? Can a cost segregation study be done with these while it's still being constructed or while it's still being built, or does it have to wait until it's actually done?
So we're waiting until it's actually done. Therefore, we can study the building. So if you're building a building, we want you to collect all of your invoices, collect all of the data, all of the AIA documents that your contractor is going to give you to say, hey, I spent money on these parts and pieces. Keep all that data, run it through Michael, and we'll take all of that data to marry that with the plans, marry that with hundreds of photos. So we have to wait till the building's completed to be able to do that. But there are other opportunities for buildings that are being constructed. Can we get off kilter just for a second? Do you have any clients that are building, say, hotels or nursing homes or something with a lot of walls, but before they're constructed?
A few of them, yeah.
Yeah. So little known tax reform called green zip tape. So movable and removable walls qualify as 5-year property. So during the construction process, if you have non-load-bearing walls in these structures, hotels, or you're renovating an old office building and turning that into luxury apartments, all of those walls on the inside are non-load-bearing. So if you use an IRS-approved sheetrock tape to mud the joints so that in the future, if you ever want to move that wall, you could simply pull on the tape. It's a high tensile strength tape, but it'll expose the screws of the sheetrock. You can easily remove the sheetrock, reuse it in the building, move the studs and so forth. So it gets a designation of movable wall. Therefore, it's 5-year property. Therefore, it's eligible for bonus depreciation. So if you're constructing a building, that might be something for us to talk about, because now all those interior walls are personal property, which are eligible for accelerated depreciation. So
that's interesting. Have you ever heard of a franchise business called Temporary Wall Systems?
I have not. Tell me about that.
TWS, Temporary Wall Systems. I would be curious if if their product also qualifies for 5 year or accelerated like Section 179 and or bonus. That
Yep,
so I
it
mean,
will.
a lot of people that follow me know that I'm a CPA with a niche in the franchise industry. So
Hmm.
Reader CPA Group, CPA firm for small businesses and individuals. And I would say our two niches are franchise industry, working with a lot of franchisees, and also working with real estate investors and real estate professionals. And so that's why
Okay.
on the latter, right, cost seg is a big part of that. But on the franchise, I work with a lot of franchise businesses on the franchisee side, and TWS is this emerging brand that's come out over the last. I mean, I'm sure they've been around for a while, but they've started franchising recently, and so temporary wall system. So I would imagine, that those walls would qualify. Like one of the value props of
Absolutely.
going with TWS. It's a
Absolutely,
great
they would.
business, but
Yep.
so yeah, that's very interesting. So you're the executive vice president of cost segregation services, aka CSSI. Tell us a bit about the company.
It's again been around for over 20 years. We were recently took on some partners that have injected some cash into us, so we're expanding our services. To historically, we've done just cost segregation. We now also have the capabilities of doing Section 179D, which is the ability to for those that are making their buildings more energy efficient or building energy efficient buildings. There's some special tax deductions for that. Research and development tax credits (R&D). We can support that as well as the green zip that we just talked about to create movable walls that are eligible for accelerated depreciation. So we're expanding our line of services here. So it's been an interesting ride here over the last year.
That's awesome. We've talked high level about the impact of these studies, but can you outline what is your team's process when working with a building owner or a client?
Sure. Again, if you're purchasing a building, you probably want to go ahead and do a cost segregation study in the first year. Therefore, you're starting with the appropriate accounting method so that you don't have to change that in future years if you were to switch over from straight line to accelerated depreciation. As you know, Michael, that'll save the 3115, which is expensive to do. So it's cost effective to, when you first buy your building, to have the study done sometime before you file your taxes. So it doesn't have to be done in the calendar year that you buy it, but you got to do it before you file your taxes. So that's the best case. Therefore, you're minimizing your increasing your deductions, which helps you pay less taxes, which means you keep more cash in your pocket to be able to spend on the business and get your business up and going. So when you first buy it, that's good. But if if it's been 10 years, you can still do a cost segregation study, if necessary. You can go back as long as you've owned the building, basically. But about the 10-year mark, you've already taken some of your depreciation. So does it still make sense to do?
Got it. So, all right, David, let me address an age-old question. How long does it take? Is cost segregation a lengthy process that clients should anticipate doing well in advance of a particular need, or is it something that happens boom, boom, boom in 3 days?
It's not a 3 day process, so it's about a month. So about 4 week process, 4 to 6 weeks. I usually tell people. So because you've got to get the information in, get the inspector there, have all that done, send the report, have it reviewed. So there's a number of steps in the process that we make very easy. So for your owners, Michael and I are going to make it very easy for you, where you just got to write a check. We'll take care of all the hard work and get that done. But it's about 4 to 6 week process to get it all done. It can be accelerated if necessary, but that's standard.
Yeah. Now let's circle back to the A word, right? Audit, because there are clients that don't move forward with a cost segregation study purely because of audit risk.
Great.
It's just a matter of sticking, like, if I know that you mentioned this before, but if you can just lean into it a little bit more, how do you quell their fears? How do you quell their fears?
Yeah, good question, Michael. Michael, I'm not a betting man, but here are the odds. In our 20 plus years of doing 45,000 studies, how many audits have we been involved in? About 15, maybe 20. 15,
Is one of
15 or 20
Have you
out
ever
of
done a cost segregation study on any of Donald Trump's properties?
No, actually, we talked to the Trump people. God, this was over 11 years ago. They weren't aware of it back then, but they certainly use it now. But so to get back, an audit is not high risk. Doing a cost segregation is not an audit trigger. What Michael does is Michael gets a qualified name brand cost segregation firm to partner with. So if there ever is an audit, I call it the slide. They say, we see you used cost segregation. Do you have your reports? You slide the report over. They're gonna look at that and go shake
They're
their
going to say,
head
oh,
and
CSSI
slide
approved.
it over to the side. They can
Right.
beat on it for weeks, and a couple nickels might fall out, but they're there for dollars. So,
Hmm.
they're it's really not something that they take a look at, because we follow all their guiding principles. We follow the audit technique guide, so we do it right. So, some of your peers that might try and do it themselves, that might get some scrutiny, because they know that you're not good at looking at plans and so forth. So we have all the tools to use aerial photography to draw a line around your parking lot, then boom, the computer gives us, how many square feet there is. So it's all documented. It's all well done. And, cost segregation as a whole, prices have come down. So it's very cost effective these days. There's not, the only reason not to do it is you can't take advantage of it. You might not be making any money. You don't need the deductions and so forth. But the majority of people today that own commercial properties use accelerated depreciation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a no brainer. And then I mean, is there a minimum dollar? That's interesting. You bring up a good point. So commercial, right? Like, what about residential? Investment residential property. Like what? Like is there like what's top of mind for you when it comes to a cost segregation for a commercial property or a residential property, industrial property, mixed use, and like minimum dollar amount? Like if someone buys a little townhouse and rents it out for $150,000, like is that too not worth it? Just kind of like you know, what are you
No,
thinking of all that?
so let me roll out a strategy on short term rentals. So we do a lot of short term rentals. Your clients are buying those. They can easily manage the property themselves. Therefore, they're active participants. Therefore, it's active cash for them versus passive, right? So any deductions that we create by studying their property, they can not only use those deductions against the rent that they've been receiving, but also potentially against a W-2 income. So lots of your investors, I'm sure, are going to the Airbnbs or the other short-term rentals and doing those. Here's the ultimate for short-term rentals. So if you're going to buy, a property, a lot of people buy homes and then convert them into short-term rentals. They spend a lot of cash remodeling them. They'll go in and gut them and so forth. Find one that's already been a short-term rental or has been in service, active service in the past. Therefore, you can buy that and either put it in, start renovating, or put it in service for a short time and renovate it. All the renovations that you do, all the money that you spend on the inside is what's eligible for qualified improvement property. Michael will know that. You don't need to know that because Michael knows it. And therefore it's eligible for bonus depreciation in the first year. So get one that's already been a short-term rental, renovate the hell out of it, and all those renovation costs are eligible for bonus depreciation in the first year. In 2023, it was like 80% of that, 60% in 2024. But
Yeah.
that's a great cash flow strategy.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
your question is, what's the minimum size? So day in and day out, we'll take a $250,000, maybe a $200,000 short-term rental, and we can still cost effectively get that done for them. Cost effective is how much do you have to pay me and Michael to get all the paperwork done so you can get this interest-free loan from the government, so to speak. So if you're paying us a dollar, you should expect to get at a minimum 10, 15, $20 in cash flow. So pay us a dollar and you get 20 in return that you can go put to work. Uh, you know, Time value of money, that money's working for you. There is recapture. So when you sell that property, there's recapture against this. You have to pay the money back or the taxes back. But there's always a 1031 exchange where you can just exchange that building for the next one. There's no recapture. So working with Michael and his group, that there's an exit strategy where we minimize the tax bite.
Yeah, that's what I explain to a lot of people when, there are clients that really do their homework and come prepared on, these types of conversations with the strategy. And, not only is audit a concern, but they also think, well, I'm going to have no basis if I sell this thing in 5 years. Well, it's like, well, yes, but, or, drastically less basis because you accelerated all the depreciation, but how much in taxes did you save in the here and now? And then also, is it applicable to do a 1031 exchange or a Delaware statutory trust? So those are obviously big things to take into consideration as well on the sales side of the property. So yeah, we're entrenched with those types of strategic tax conversations all the time with our clients. So David, you talked about this before, but just to recap it, obviously cost segregation is your business name. It's what you're awesome at, but does your team offer any other services? The Section 179D and the green tape again, like are there any more
green,
other than those two? And I got the name wrong on the green tape and just lean into green zip tape, but the Section 179D, can you lean into that a little bit more?
Sure. So if you're doing renovations on a property, typically it has to be a larger property. So this might not be to your general audience, but 40,000 square feet or more. Typically, if you're improving the energy efficiency of the building, if you're making the HVAC system more energy efficient, if you're dealing with the envelope, making that more insulating it more, if you're replacing the lights with the LED lights and so forth, all that can be captured. We can determine what you've spent, and then you're eligible for deductions, up to $1 per square foot and up to $5 a square foot in some situations. So that would be another opportunity to say, hey, tell us what you got, send us your plans. We'll take a look at it, and we'll determine here's the deductions that you're going to be eligible for. Here's what it's going to cost to get that. Does that make sense? So typically it's extremely cost effective to do a Section 179D study on buildings that have been renovated or new buildings that are being constructed and meet minimum requirements for energy standards.
Awesome. David Deshotels, he tells us about cost segregation studies so well.
There you go. I love
Trying to be a little spontaneous. David, thank you so much for being here. An absolute blast. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Hey, it's a pleasure supporting you guys. Thanks so much for the opportunity. And remember, friends don't let friends overpay their taxes. So we're here to make sure you guys, we're taking care of you guys. So thanks again, Michael, for the opportunity.
Amen. Amen, brother. Thank you, David.